Welcome back to the Fish Files. Today we're going to go over the most popular schooling fish. And this is the most popular schooling fish based on wholesale sales. Not necessarily what your favorite schooling fish is, what sells the most in that particular category. I'm missing one fish which I'll reference, and we're going to skip a family of fish which is the Danios because we already covered them in the most hardy fish. But I will reference them because they are part of that top 10 list of based on domestic sales. If you're interested in any of the fish in this show, even the ones that I didn't display, for instance the ones in the Danio family, just refer to the link in the description or go to your local pet store. I'm going to show you 10 very popular schooling fish. Again, I'm excluding zebra Danios, a whole Danio family, and one micro tiger Danio fish called the CPD or Celestial Pearl Danio. Those guys, very, very popular. That would be on anyone's top 10 list, but I already covered that. So first one up, I'm going to start with the biggest of the fish I'm showing you today. This is called a Roseline Shark or a Denisoni Barb, D-E-N-N-O-S-I, Denisoni. D-E-N-N-A-S-O-N-I, Denisoni Barb. I and most people in the trade call them Roseline Sharks. But they are a beautiful schooling fish, particular because these guys get a whopping 4.5 inches and a very beautiful, reason they're called Roselines, a very broad rose-colored band along the body and a beautiful yellow tail. At this size, which I would call 2 inches, they are just starting to sport some of their colors. But these guys are wonderful for pretty much any size tank except for maybe 10 gallons and under. Those are a little small because they do grow to 4.5 inches. They'll get along with cichlids. They're very fast. You don't have to worry about them getting eaten. The only exception would be, predator cichlids like big black convicts, big green terrors, that kind of fish. But in general, colorful African cichlids would go well with Roseline Sharks. Roseline Sharks would go well in a community tank with gouramis and angelfish. Nano species might get a little harried by them, so the stress level would raise a little bit too much, a bit too big and fast for nanotank species. Other than that though, they're a great overall schooling fish, and they're expensive. They cost upwards $25 in the pet store, and a school means 6 or more, so it's a big expense, but they live a long time and they're going to be a centerpiece of your aquarium. And now we're going right to the number one popular schooling fish in America after glow tetras, which registered are. I'm not a big fan of, so I'm not even going to push them here, but I did show them in the most popular hardy fish, one of our first shows of this, the Fish Files. But this is the Neon Tetra, and very hardy, very affordable, probably one of the cheapest fish in our trade, schooling fish, because they're very easy to breed on a commercial scale. And you can distinguish a Neon Tetra from a Cardinal Tetra, and the Cardinal Tetra, by the way, is the number one fish sold in Europe. Neon Tetras take a close second, and glowfish are illegal in Europe. So these guys, you can tell from Cardinals because the red stripe only goes from the back of the tail to the midway point of the body. The Cardinal Tetra has a red bar that goes all the way across the bottom of the body. That's the quickest way to tell the difference. Also generally, well always, Neon Tetras are a fatter body, more oval shape, and the Cardinal Tetras are a more slender shape. One note on schooling fish, the reason it's recommended to get 4 or 6 or more before you introduce them into the tank is because in nature they're a schooler and they get very stressed when they're in singles or doubles. They need to be in a school to lower that stress level so they can swim together. They're going to be in a much happier state of mind. They're going to live longer for you. They're going to eat better. So I would recommend a school being 6 actually or more. And in fact, the smaller the fish, probably the bigger the school. Roseline Sharks, you could get away with 3 or 4. But the Neon Tetras originate in all over the Amazon basin in South America, but you don't get any Neon Tetras now from the wild. They are there. They're all over the place there. But Neon Tetras are so prolific in the trade. They're bred primarily in Asia. So many different breeders in all the Asian countries that these things are going to be around forever. Now we're going to upgrade to the Cardinal Tetra. Now, Cardinal Tetras are found in Brazil and Colombia. Most that you see in the trade or in the pet store are from breeders in Asia. They're not bred in the United States. There might be some hobbyists that do it, but not on a commercial scale. In fact, I'd be interested if any hobbyists are breeding successfully Cardinal Tetras. Cardinal Tetras have a little more requirement than Neon Tetras. They have to have temperatures 77 degrees or higher, or you'll have ick problems. And the neons are a little bit more temperature tolerant, and they need cleaner water and lower pH. Neons can handle a little wider range pH levels, particularly high level, than the Cardinal Tetras. Cardinal Tetras are my favorite schooling fish, but again, everything has to be right. Low pH, clean water, that's the primary, and high temperature. I added one Neon Tetra because they're so similar. I want to see if the audience can find the Neon Tetra among these Cardinal Tetras. Just a quick hint again, the difference between a Neon Tetra and a Cardinal Tetra. Neon Tetras have a rounder body, or more oval body. They have a red stripe that goes from the tail to the midpoint of the body. The Cardinal Tetra goes all the way along the bottom of the body. When they're stressed, that red mark can get around the belly, can get a little washed out. And I see a few of these are washed out. Don't let that fool you. Don't let that fool you. There is only one Neon Tetra schooling around with these guys. This is a pretty little schooling fish, extremely popular because it is a very affordable fish and it brings a lot of red into the aquarium. You can do that with some other fish. Red phantoms, a little bit more pricey. You can do it with ruby tetras, again affordable, but those guys are wild caught and very, very fragile. So Ember Tetras kind of cross the divide. They are affordable, they are bright red, and they are hardy. So I just want to give these guys a show. They're also, in this case, taking a little bit of time to acclimate to the tank. I just poured them in. Because they're schooling fish, they're a little shy. Take another minute or two to acclimate, but once they get together, they'll start swimming around together. Well, that's a fail. Wanted to show you how lovely they are when they all get together in a group and swim around. But these guys are burrowers. They go right for the hiding places in the fish tank. Yeah, I've never introduced Ember Tetras to coarse glass gravel before. Once they acclimate to this thing, they'll school around and swim just fine, but I'm not going to bore you because this could take a few minutes. So we're going to take these guys back out. So one note about fish in general, they lose color when they're transported. They lose color when they're stressed, and Ember Tetras really lose color. I'm looking at these guys and they were bright red in the tank, washed out, dead Ember Tetras. And when you receive fish from the pet store or if you're buying from an online store, just remember these guys, when you first introduce them, they're not going to be like you saw in the store. It's going to take them a day to get all their color back. Now, here's a fun one. This schooling fish is called the Rino Tetra. Scientific name Blaheri, after Heiko Blair. They have a red nose, and reminiscent of a drunk with a red nose, they're called rummy nose. Those who follow literature, a rummy is a guy who was drunk on rum all the time. So they're rummy nose tetras. They have what's called a flag tail. Anytime you have black and white striped tail, it's called a flag tail. So rummy nose have a red nose and a flag tail, so they're a very pretty patterned fish and a really nice schooler. These guys are not as sensitive as the Ember Tetras, so they are already all swimming about, so I'd like to get a closer look. Most rummy nose tetras come from Brazil and Colombia. They are also tank raised in Asia. I find these are very hardy fish. They don't tolerate the pH much above 7.5. So if you have a high pH water area, you're going to have to get that pH down to put these guys in your fish tank. The next fish I'm going to introduce is the Silver Tip Tetra. Silver Tip Tetras are found in almost every pet store, except for Petco and PetSmart because they don't have much of anything. But every independent aquarium store usually carries Silver Tip Tetras. Silver Tip Tetras grow to 2 inches. They're a good size schooling fish, very hardy. They can tolerate a wide range of temperatures and pH levels, and they are very affordable. These are on the small size. Generally, when you get in the pet store, they're probably maybe 30%, 40% bigger than this. My breeder, this is the size he had. This is the size I had to take. Again, marvelous schooling fish. There is a couple fish that I am not going to introduce on this show that are in that top popular. You can find them in any store. One would be the Serpe Tetra. Used to be called the red miner. Now pretty much everyone calls it the Serpe Tetra. And the other one is the black neon tetra. The breeder for both those fish in Indonesia is having some problems with his ponds. So I'm not going to have those in the warehouse for another week or so. On to the Barb and Rasbora family. The most popular Rasbora in the aquarium trade is Harlequin Rasbora. And the most popular barb in the aquarium trade is the tiger barb. There are also variations of these: green tiger barbs, albino tiger barbs, platinum tiger barbs. Harlequin Rasboras have a purple Harlequin Rasbora variation, but these are the most popular within that species. Without further ado, this is the tiger barb. It was introduced on the other show, which is the show that featured the hardiest aquarium fishes, but these are the most popular schooling fish, and it would be a silly show if I didn't include these. Tiger barbs can get a little aggressive when they get about 2 inches. They don't bite fish, but they chase them around. They'll nip, they won't take pieces of their fins out, at least not in my experience. You may have experienced something different. But a great fish for an aquarium tank that has everything but really gentle nanospecies. So if you carry things like celestial pearl daniels, emerald eye rasboras, green cubitais, chili rasboras, don't put in tiger barbs. Everything else, go for it. Now, related to the barb family, we have rasboras, Harlequin rasboras. They are one of the larger rasbora species, not these guys in particular, these are juveniles, but they do get 2 inches and marvelous colors. The bigger they get, the more colorful they get, and they are also beautiful schoolers and very gentle, peaceful fish, good for any aquarium. So Harlequin rasboras originate in Malaysia and Singapore. They are all tank raised now. You don't find wild Harlequin rasboras in the aquarium trade. You can still find them in just a few secluded areas out in their native habitats, but they are 100% tank raised. They'll live for 5 to 8 years, which is pretty long for little schooling fish. Neon tetras, you get more like 3 to 4 years out of them. But these guys, long-lived, hardy. They can also handle low pH, so they're really good with South American species too. But they can go all the way up to 8.0 pH. In general though, in their native habitat, they're in peaty areas, so peat moss, that kind of stuff where there's a lot of decay, you get low pH. So in general, they're under 7 in their native environment, which they don't really have anymore. And now, one of the most prolific fish in the world, the cherry barb. It's native to Sri Lanka. It was discovered in 1929 for the aquarium trade, and it is striking because the males are bright rosy red and the females are drab dirty brown. You can from time to time get male only schools available to the trade, but in general they come in about 50-50 males and females. And please don't be mean to the aquarium store owner. When you get cherry barbs and you want like a school of them, please get 3 males and 3 females. Don't make him select all the males and just get stuck with a bunch of ugly brown fish. Another reason for that though is you can get them to do some schooling activity and breeding activity in your fish tank if you have females. Females always get more color display out of the males if they're in the vicinity of the males for obvious reasons. So always try and mix them up a little bit when you get these fish together. One thing interesting about cherry barbs, their habitat is nearly gone in Sri Lanka, not because of global warming, but because, like every one of these other species, when they're threatened from overpopulation. The good news is they're an invasive species in Mexico and Colombia. So we do have some populations in those areas that are taking hold. There's a silver lining to invasive species. The scientific name on this guy is fun to say, Barbodes semifasciolatus. Makes you sound smart. They are gold barbs or Chinese barbs because they come from China. They were one of the first aquarium species domesticated for the aquarium trade in China. Tropical species, that is. They've had goldfish and koi. We've talked about that in an earlier program for 1,000 years. But these guys in nature come in a kind of a slimy, dark green, drab olive color. But through breeding practices, they brought out a few of the gold genes, and now you have a nice solid gold or golden or Chinese Barb. They grow to 2 inches. They're good sized schooling fish. They are peaceful. They are tolerant of colder temperatures, but they aren't tolerant of really high pH. So you can't really have them in like 8.0 or more pH. But they are a terrific hardy species for the aquarium. The reason I'm introducing them to the show as a top 10 is because I don't have any Serpae Tetras. So these guys would be in top probably 15 schooling fish that's sold domestically in the aquarium trade. I wouldn't call them the top 10, I'm cheating here, but they are popular. So I hope you enjoyed this show of the top 10 schooling fish, and I hope to see you in the next show. And in the meantime, between this show and the next show, if you don't have one already, get an aquarium.